On a quiet winter evening, the small town was blanketed in a thick layer of snow. The world felt hushed, the air crisp and cold as snowflakes drifted down from the darkened sky, dusting the roads and rooftops in soft white. The streets, typically bustling with activity, were now dimly lit by the occasional street lamp, casting long shadows across the empty sidewalks. A heavy truck slowly made its way down the icy roads, its tires crunching over the snow as it carefully navigated the slick surface. Michael, a retired black veteran, walked home from the local grocery store, his hands gripping the bags filled with essentials for his modest dinner. The weight of the bags in his rough, calloused hands did little to ease the fatigue of the day. His broad shoulders, hidden under the fabric of a long overcoat, carried the weight of many years. His eyes, though calm, were always observant, scanning the quiet town as he made his way through the streets. The cold didn't bother him much. After all, he'd endured much harsher conditions in his younger years. But the silence of the night made him acutely aware of every sound, the crunch of his boots on the snow, the distant hum of the truck, and the occasional rustling of the trees in the brisk wind. Ahead of him, on the sidewalk near a row of townhouses, a nanny struggled to keep a restless toddler in check. The little boy, Liam, seemed to have more energy than he knew what to do with. His cheeks flushed from the cold as he pulled at the nanny's hand, eager to explore. She tried her best to corral him, but he was determined to escape her grasp. Nearby, Liam's wealthy parents stood in a conversation, completely absorbed in their phone call, oblivious to their child's wandering. Liam darted forward, his small legs carrying him further away from the nanny's grasp. His excitement and curiosity led him to the edge of the sidewalk, where the dangers of the icy streets loomed. The nanny's worried glance flickered between Liam and his distracted parents, but she wasn't quick enough. Michael, still walking down the street, noticed the child's reckless movement. Something instinctively urged him to pick up his pace, unaware of how this moment would unfold. As Liam's tiny boots scuffed along the sidewalk, his eyes caught sight of a small snowball that had rolled off the edge of the road. Without thinking, he let go of the nanny's hand and darted after it, giggling in excitement. The snowball danced just out of his reach, rolling toward the street. His laughter echoed through the cold air as he stumbled and fell in his rush to catch it. The snow beneath him was slick, and his small, unsteady hands reached out in an attempt to regain his balance. But it was too late. The snowball kept rolling, and Liam's eager chase brought him dangerously close to the road. As he struggled to push himself up, he slipped again, and before he could regain his footing, the sound of an approaching truck roared from around the corner. Its headlights cut through the darkness, blinding Liam's view of the approaching danger. The truck, heavy and massive, was speeding toward him, the driver oblivious to the child's presence in the road. Liam, still unable to stand due to the ice, remained in the path of the oncoming vehicle. His little body, trapped in a moment of fear, couldn't react fast enough. The world seemed to freeze as the truck loomed closer, and for a split second it seemed certain that the child would be struck. But then, out of nowhere, a figure rushed into view. Michael, seeing the peril in front of him, acted without hesitation. His heart pounded as he sprinted toward the child. Dropping his grocery bags onto the snow, he pushed himself harder, knowing time was running out. He reached Liam in a flash, diving toward him with all his strength. In a swift motion, Michael extended his arms and shoved Liam out of the way, sending the child tumbling safely to the side. But Michael's own momentum carried him forward as the truck screeched to a halt, just inches from where the child had been moments before. The massive vehicle grazed Michael's side, knocking him violently into a snowbank, his body crashing against the icy ground. The world erupted in chaos. Onlookers screamed in horror, their eyes wide as they watched the terrifying near miss. The nanny screamed Liam's name in terror, rushing toward him as he lay on the cold sidewalk, unharmed but shaken. The wealthy parents, now aware of the danger their child had been in, sprinted to their son, scooping him into their arms with tears in their eyes. They thanked Michael over and over, their words jumbled with gratitude and disbelief. The truck driver, equally shaken, quickly stepped out of his cab, his hands trembling as he approached the scene. He looked at Michael lying in the snowbank, then glanced nervously at the child. Realizing that he had narrowly avoided tragedy, he approached Michael, checking to see if he was okay, his voice laced with concern. Michael, winded but conscious, waved him off with a small nod. His body ached, but he was alive, and the child was safe. His only thought was that he had done what needed to be done. Nothing more, nothing less. Despite the chaos of the moment, Michael remained remarkably calm. Bruised and shaken, he slowly pushed himself up from the snowbank, brushing off the snow from his overcoat. His ribs ached, and his shoulder stung where the truck had grazed him, but his focus never wavered. As the parents enveloped Liam in their arms, thanking him profusely, Michael stood quietly to the side, trying to regain his breath. "You saved our boy. We can never repay you for this," the father said, his voice thick with emotion. He looked as though he might offer Michael something, perhaps money, or at least a gift as a token of their gratitude. Michael shook his head immediately, his expression gentle but firm. "Anyone would have done it. He's just a kid, and I couldn't let him get hurt." He paused for a moment, looking at the parents, then at the child in their arms. "I'm glad he's okay. That's enough." The parents exchanged a look of disbelief, clearly not expecting such humility in the face of what Michael had just done. But Michael was already moving toward his bags, which had spilled out onto the icy ground during the rescue. He bent down to gather them, carefully checking to see if anything was broken. His grocery bags, though a little crumpled, were still intact. "Please," the mother said, her voice pleading as she stepped forward, "let us at least offer you something. You risked your life for him. It's the least we can do." Michael's response was simple and resolute. "I don't need anything." He turned his gaze back toward the street, where the snow was falling more heavily now, a fresh blanket covering everything. He wasn't in this for rewards or recognition. He was just a man who had done what felt right in the moment. As the parents continued to express their thanks, Michael turned away from them, offering a small wave. "Take care," he said, and without another word he started walking back down the snowy street, leaving the scene behind him. His feet crunched through the snow as he carried his now dented bags, each step firm but unhurried, as if he had just completed another ordinary task in a world full of extraordinary circumstances. Unbeknownst to Michael, a bystander who had witnessed the entire scene had pulled out their phone during the rescue. The video of Michael diving in front of the truck to save Liam quickly went viral. The caption read, "This man just risked his life to save a stranger's child." It was shared thousands of times, with people marveling at Michael's quick thinking, his selflessness, and his calmness in the face of danger. But Michael was unaware of the growing attention. He simply walked home, his quiet, humble demeanor unchanged, while the world began to take notice of the man who had shown what true heroism looked like. Michael's life had always been one of resilience, shaped by both the battles he fought overseas and the quiet, persistent struggles he faced in his daily life. His apartment was modest, a small one-bedroom space on the top floor of a building that had seen better days. The creaky floorboards and peeling wallpaper told the story of the years of neglect it had endured. Yet, to Michael, it was home, a place of comfort where he could retreat after long days, a sanctuary where he could find solace in the simplest of things. On one of the narrow shelves in his apartment sat a framed military photo. The image was slightly faded, but the pride in Michael's eyes was unmistakable. His uniform was pristine in the photo, his medals catching the light as he stood at attention. The photo was his reminder of a life that felt so distant now, one filled with purpose, camaraderie, and the feeling of making a difference on a larger scale. The photo was also a reminder of his service, a chapter in his life that had shaped him into the man he was now. Though Michael was proud of his time in the military, he didn't speak about it much. He had been a soldier who fought for his country, but now he was a civilian, living in a city where opportunities seemed few and far between. Despite his bravery and service, finding stable work had been an ongoing challenge. He took on odd jobs here and there, sometimes manual labor, sometimes working as a handyman for neighbors or businesses. When people needed help, Michael was there. Whether it was fixing a leaky faucet, shoveling snow, or simply offering a hand to a neighbor in need, he was always ready to step in. But, despite his generosity, Michael struggled to make ends meet. He didn't earn much, and he never expected anything in return. His pride wouldn't allow him to ask for help. His humble lifestyle was a direct reflection of the quiet strength he carried with him. Even though he sometimes felt overwhelmed by the weight of his situation, he never complained. He was used to making do with what little he had, always finding a way to get by. His neighbors, however, recognized Michael for what he was, a hero in their midst, though he never sought recognition. They affectionately referred to him as the Protector. He was the kind of man who could always be counted on, whether it was in a crisis or on a quiet day when someone just needed a helping hand. They had all seen him at work, whether he was volunteering at the local shelter, helping an elderly neighbor carry groceries, or offering advice to anyone in need. He was a fixture in their lives, a constant reminder that, despite the hardships people faced, there were still those who would rise above their circumstances to help others. Though Michael was beloved in his community, he was also a private man. He rarely spoke about his own struggles, keeping his emotions locked away from the world. Most people didn't realize how much weight he carried, how difficult it was to make ends meet, or how deeply he missed the sense of purpose that had filled his days as a soldier. He was a man of few words, preferring to act rather than speak. Yet those who knew him best understood that behind his stoic exterior was a man who deeply cared for those around him. He never expected praise or acknowledgement for the work he did. Helping others was simply part of who he was. Michael's life, though filled with challenges, was also a testament to resilience. He lived by a strong moral code, always doing what he believed to be right, regardless of the personal cost. His actions, both big and small, rippled through his community, earning him the respect and admiration of all who knew him. But for Michael, the greatest reward was not in the recognition or admiration of others. It was in knowing that he had done his part to make the world a little better, one act of kindness at a time. The video of Michael's heroic act spread like wildfire across social media within hours of being posted. It was a simple yet powerful moment. A man, a stranger, risking his life to save a child. The video, captured by a bystander, showed Michael diving into the icy road, shoving the toddler out of harm's way just in time as the truck barreled toward them. The footage left people in awe of Michael's courage, and within minutes it had been shared thousands of times. News outlets across the country picked up the story, with headlines like "Local Hero Saves Toddler from Tragedy" and "Selfless Man Risks Life to Save Stranger's Child." Social media was flooded with comments praising Michael for his bravery, and even celebrities began sharing the video. The comments section was filled with admiration and gratitude. People spoke of his actions as a reminder of the goodness that still existed in the world. Hashtags like #hero in our midst and selfless courage trended for days. Even local politicians chimed in, calling for recognition of Michael's actions, with some suggesting that he should be awarded the city's highest honor for bravery. But it wasn't just the public who was paying attention. Liam's father, David, a successful businessman and the toddler's parent, had seen the video circulating on his newsfeed. He watched in stunned silence as Michael's brave act unfolded on his screen. The realization hit him hard. This was the man who had saved his son's life. A wave of gratitude washed over David, but it was quickly followed by guilt. He had never even thought to properly thank Michael in the chaotic aftermath of the incident. The businessman, known for his meticulous planning and decision-making in his business ventures, had failed to recognize the true magnitude of Michael's sacrifice. David's heart sank as he watched the video again, replaying Michael's selfless act in his mind. The humility in Michael's demeanor was clear. He didn't want any recognition, didn't ask for anything in return. But David knew that what Michael had done went beyond a simple heroic gesture. Michael had shown not just physical bravery, but an unwavering commitment to doing what was right, even when it came at a personal cost. David made a decision then and there. He couldn't let this opportunity slip by. Simply thanking Michael wasn't enough. It wouldn't even come close to honoring the magnitude of his actions. David began to plan a grand gesture, a way to show Michael just how much his courage meant to him and his family. He couldn't undo the past or the way he had initially overlooked Michael's quiet bravery, but he could make sure that Michael knew how deeply his sacrifice had impacted their lives. Inspired by Michael's courage and selflessness, David set about orchestrating something special. He wanted to do more than offer a token of appreciation. He wanted to change Michael's life, just as Michael had changed his son's life forever. David couldn't shake the images of Michael's heroic act from his mind. His initial sense of guilt had evolved into a burning determination to do something for the man who had risked everything for his son. He couldn't just send a thank you card or offer a quick reward. It didn't feel right. David knew that Michael's life, a life that had been shaped by quiet sacrifices and resilience, deserved more. After days of research and effort, David finally tracked Michael down to his modest apartment. The building, which was in stark contrast to the opulence of David's own home, stood in a quiet part of town. The building was older, its walls weathered, but it was where Michael had made his life. David walked up the stairs and knocked on the door of apartment 305. When Michael opened the door, he didn't recognize David at first, but the businessman immediately introduced himself. "Hello, I'm David Carter, Liam's father," he said, extending his hand. Michael's expression was one of hesitation and uncertainty, as though he couldn't believe someone like David would be at his door. "I came to thank you in person," David continued, stepping forward slightly. "I owe you so much for what you did for my son." Michael glanced at the ground, looking uncomfortable. "There's no need for all that," he muttered. "I didn't do it for recognition. Your son is alive, and that's all that matters." David could see the pride and humility in Michael's eyes. He knew it wasn't about the gratitude. It was about the fact that Michael had done what anyone would have done. But David couldn't let it go. He needed Michael to understand how deeply the act had impacted him, how deeply it had impacted his family. "I understand you didn't do it for the attention," David replied, his voice soft yet firm. "But what you did for Liam means more to me than you'll ever know. You gave him his life back, and I want to make sure you know how much that means to us." Michael shifted uncomfortably, looking as though he didn't want to hear any of it. "I've got my life," he said simply, "and that's enough." But David wasn't done. He had a purpose, and he knew what he had to do. "I know you've been through a lot," David said, his voice growing more sincere. "I've learned about your story, about the struggles you've faced, and I want to help. You've helped my family, and I want to return the favor." David wasn't sure what kind of response he would get, but he was willing to take the chance. He looked at Michael and asked, "What if I could help you, give you the opportunity to make your life a little easier?" No strings attached. Michael's hesitation was palpable. He had been so used to doing things for others, sacrificing his own comfort and security, that accepting help had never crossed his mind. But seeing the sincerity in David's eyes and hearing the quiet but firm determination in his voice, Michael was beginning to see that perhaps he had underestimated the impact of his actions and the opportunity that David was offering. A few days later, David returned to Michael's apartment, this time with his family and a lawyer by his side. The small apartment was a stark contrast to the impressive entourage that had arrived, and Michael couldn't help but feel a little overwhelmed. He had been expecting another visit from David, but nothing like this. David and his family greeted him warmly, but it was the lawyer who handed Michael a sealed envelope, its weight signaling that this was no ordinary gesture. Michael looked at David, who smiled but remained quiet, allowing the lawyer to speak. "Mr. Michael, after much thought and consideration, Mr. Carter has decided to offer you something to ensure you have a secure future. He would like you to accept this deed to a house in a better neighborhood and, along with that, a stable job offer at his company to help you get back on your feet." Michael's heart raced. A house? A job? It didn't feel real. He took the papers from the lawyer, but his hands trembled. "I've never needed much to live," Michael muttered, staring at the deed. "This is too much. You don't have to do this for me." David stepped forward, his tone gentle but firm. "You've given my son a second chance at life. I'll never be able to repay you for that. But I want to make sure you have the chance to live comfortably, without worrying about how to survive. We can't undo the past, but we can give you a future, a good one. You deserve that." Michael's mind raced as he glanced at his modest surroundings and thought of his past hardships. How could he accept such an extravagant offer when he had always lived so simply? But before he could respond, the door to his apartment opened, and a crowd of neighbors, who had been watching from the hallway, gathered outside, cheering. "You've done so much for all of us." One elderly neighbor, Mrs. Hall, said, her voice filled with emotion. "Let someone do something for you for a change. You've earned it." The crowd murmured in agreement, and Michael, still in disbelief, could feel the weight of their support behind him. His neighbors had always looked up to him, seeing him as a pillar of strength, but now They were giving him the encouragement he had never known he needed. Finally, Michael looked at David, at the family, and then at the crowd that had gathered to support him. With a deep breath, he nodded, his eyes brimming with emotion. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with gratitude. "I don't know what to say. I'm not used to receiving, but I accept. I accept your gift, your kindness, and your belief in me." The neighbors cheered once more, their support overwhelming as Michael stepped forward to shake hands with David. The bond that had formed between them was undeniable, built not just on gratitude but on mutual respect and understanding. And, as the crowd continued to cheer, Michael realized that sometimes allowing others to help you wasn't just about receiving. It was about accepting the possibility of a better life, one that he could finally step into with hope. Michael's new home quickly became a symbol of his fresh start. For the first time in years, he had a place that offered stability and comfort. The warmth of the house, the laughter of neighbors, and the sense of belonging grounded him in a way he had never known before. David and Michael's friendship grew stronger with each passing day, as Michael became a mentor to Liam, teaching him about bravery, kindness, and humility. He felt a sense of purpose that had long eluded him. His life had come full circle, from a man struggling to survive to one who could give back to the community he had always cared for. Inspired by Michael's actions, David launched a community initiative that supported veterans, underprivileged families, and individuals in need. With Michael's wisdom and guidance, they created programs that would help others find hope, just as Michael had found a new life. As the sun set over the snowy street outside Michael's home, he sat by the window, watching a group of children play. A smile crossed his face, full of peace and contentment. For the first time, Michael felt truly at home,